Ever wondered where the smartest states in America are? Well, today we're flipping the script and diving into the top 9 states with the lowest IQ scores. Get ready to uncover some surprising insights about intelligence across the USA. Number 9. Texas. Texas is another state that has some really good universities, and they have some pretty good school districts too. They get high marks in a lot of them. Just like any state, though, you're going to find some that are horrible. But overall, when you're looking at the education attainment level, Texas does pretty good. Their IQ isn't great. There's a great story that came out of Texas some years back about a guy I'm sure was working with a pretty low IQ. He decided to jump the fence at the local police department. He actually stole the lights off the top of a cop car and attached them to his 1978 Ford Pinto with the fake wood paneling along the side and drove up and down Main Street. And was surprised they figured out it was him that jumped the fence at the police parking lot. The average IQ in Texas is 97.4. A nice job for a 97.4 IQ level. Heating and refrigeration mechanic. Don't complain to me about that. That's according to Surprise Living. Number 8. West Virginia. West Virginia is a beautiful state with beautiful people. But there's a whole bunch of jokes and stereotypes about these people, and their intellect been going on for decades and decades. The thing about stereotypes and jokes, they don't just come out of nowhere. Stereotypes, which you shouldn't use if you really think about it, they're earned. And there's a difference between racism and stereotypes. Now, the IQ of the people out in the hollers and the people that are living in the cities is like night and day in this state. The average IQ of West Virginia is 97.2. And this one kind of surprised me. They suggest a good job for someone with that IQ is a real estate agent. Number 7. Arkansas. Arkansas, like West Virginia, has earned a lot of its stereotypes and jokes. That being said, the most common joke about Arkansas is people dating relatives. Chew on that for a while. I once saw a comedian that said, Little Rock, Arkansas, where a below-average IQ is above average. He said he was checking into a hotel in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they misspelled his first name. First name's Ron. He said he had to correct them twice. The average IQ of Arkansas is 97.1. And Surprising Live suggests a good job for that IQ is a flight attendant. Number 6. California. Yeah, you know you're not going to find a lot of low IQs on the western side of the state. It's when you start getting into the California backwoods of the desert that's where you start finding some lower IQs. There's a whole lot of people in California that are, working with half a deck. The driveway doesn't go all the way to the garage. Back around 2015 or 16, I read a news thing about a guy who had been arrested for going into women's restrooms like public restrooms, sticking his cell phone underneath or over the stall and taking a quick picture and running out. He gets caught. He's in court. He's convicted. He asks to get therapy and he's on parole. He leaves the courtroom, goes to the women's bathroom across the hallway, and starts taking pictures again. They arrest him in the courthouse right outside the courtroom he just left. His defense was double jeopardy. He thought because he was already convicted of that, he couldn't be convicted of it again. Could you just imagine the judge and the lawyers in that room when he tried to use that defense? The average IQ in California is 97.1. A good job for that IQ sewage plant operator. That is fitting because there's a lot of sewage in California. Number 5. Nevada. I'm sure with Nevada, like a lot of the states, you're going to find the lower IQs out in the middle of the state. And in Nevada's case, it's out in the middle of the freaking desert or Mars. They look very similar. I think the best example of a person with a low IQ I saw was on an episode of Cops in Las Vegas. The police roll up on this guy, he's soaking wet. Apparently, he'd been roaming around the fountain collecting change. He wasn't homeless or anything like that. He had just gambled all his money away and had no way to get home. So the cops tell him to throw all the change back in and tell him to not do it again. They go to the end of the block, do a U-turn to go back the other way, and they see him in the fountain again. It wasn't until the third time when they arrested him. Nevada's average IQ score is 96.6. And the recommended job for that IQ is dock worker. Number 4. Alabama. Yep, the heart of Dixie ain't knocking it out of the park when it comes to IQs. They ranked 4th of the nation for lowest IQs. They also ranked 4th of the nation for people who mook vodka for lizine. Alabama's got a long list of problems. And low IQ isn't even one of their worst problems. Having Birmingham within your borders, I think, is a bigger problem. Alabama's average IQ is 96.4. The suggested career for that type of IQ is auto body repair. Number 3. Mississippi. You know they never disappoint whenever you're working on a video or a list or talking about a horrible state that's got a bunch of problems. They always show up. Mississippi's got a lot of problems being consistent, and the suckage side ain't one of them. There's a newspaper called LA Weekly, and they always had the weird of the news. It was this section where they just found stories across the country that were just weird. They had a story about a guy living in Mississippi. He woke up one morning after heavy drinking and found someone had broken into his house while he was sleeping and taken everything. Just took everything he owned. He calls the police. The police eventually show up at his house and they start taking the report. One of the police that were at his house happened to look in the backyard. Everything he owned was in the backyard. So the police go next door to see if the neighbors had seen anyone break into the house in the middle of the night and do this and what was the story, and one of the neighbors said, "Yeah, I could see him doing that. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, it was him doing it, nobody else." Now I'm not sure if that's an IQ problem or I don't know what that is, but it's a great story. Mississippi's average IQ is 95.8. Suggested career path for this type of IQ is drywall. Number 2. Louisiana. Like peas and carrots, Mississippi and Louisiana are in the suckage list. There's a lot of things that Louisiana does poorly. One of my favorites is they're the actual worst in the country for workplace safety. It's like far too many people living in that state that are missing fingers. The average IQ in Louisiana is 95.2. Now, when I looked at the suggested jobs for this IQ, I was a little alarmed. One of them is sailor. That's easy, but the other one was nuclear decontamination technician. Seems like an odd field to get into with an average IQ. You throw the word nuclear on there, you expect the person to have a little education. Number 1. New Mexico. I was a little surprised at this one. When I'm thinking states with low IQ, I never thought New Mexico would. I mean, I knew they probably wouldn't be knocking it out of the park, but to be number 1, yeah, I guess it's a thing. I started looking at the education numbers, graduation rate, they kind of paint this picture. Now, obviously IQ is different from education. I'm not saying one is the other, but usually if you got a bunch of people with lower than average IQ, they're not really pushing through to get the diploma. If you ever get outside the cities in New Mexico, you start running into some people with far below average IQs. There's a whole bunch of people in this state that think there's an underground city of aliens and that the U.S. government has been at war with them for decades underground somewhere in the mountains north of New Mexico. Apparently, this is all going on and has been for a long time. There's a bunch of videos about it on YouTube. One guy's been up in those hills for years. He just goes up there like every weekend looking for the entrance to this underground city. He even puts little listening devices up against rocks, and he claims he can hear the battle going on. He's not playing with the full deck. The average IQ in New Mexico is 95. Suggested career path for an IQ of 95 is welder. They also have roofer as a possibility. Thanks for joining us on this eye-opening journey into the IQ landscape of America. If you found this video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe button for more mind-bending content. Until next time, stay curious.